the gap, standing for Jesus. Standing in the gap for family and friends. Standing in the gap, one love for all, so we all can make it in.
If we have all that down and in perspective, we always want to keep this ministry focused on what's happening now. You know, we use the scripture, which is 2,000 years ago, and even longer than that, and all that. A lot of people say, "Oh, that's so long ago," and all that. But understand, it's still active. It is still working today, and God has put us in the middle of this world, and all the things that are going on in this world, and so He wants us to thrive where He has put us. And so we have to be aware of current events and things that are happening. And to do that, we have set aside a portion of the program to what we call a Gap News. Gap News. Marvel's in charge of Gap News to keep us updated on what's going on. And I always say I'm not sure exactly what she's going to come up with, but it's always good. Marvel?
I'm back. So I have to tell y'all the truth. I had gotten this Gap News ready for last week, but then Joy Reid got me so excited for how she was dealing with that evangelical lady, which it turned out to be a good fit for the start of the evangelical. So I switched them up. This week, I'm calling it Uvalde. Again, the Justice Department did an in-depth study of what happened when all those babies and those 2 teachers got killed in Uvalde. That's what this one is about.
Back to that breaking news, the Justice Department releasing their report on that mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas 2 years ago. Let's go ahead and listen into Merrick Garland.
Undertaking this review at the request of the then mayor, the Justice Department committed to using our expertise and independence to assess the law enforcement response to the shooting and provide guidance moving forward. As I told families and survivors last night, the department's review concluded that a series of major failures of leadership, in tactics, in communications, in training, and in preparedness were made by law enforcement leaders and others responding to the mass shooting at Robb Elementary. As a result, 33 students and 3 of their teachers, many of whom had been shot, were trapped in a room with an active shooter for over an hour as law enforcement officials remained outside. I also told the families and survivors how deeply sorry I am for the losses they suffered that day and for the losses they have suffered every day since. I told them that the priority for the Justice Department in preparing this report has been to honor the memories of those who were taken from them. And I told the families gathered last night what I hope is clear among the hundreds of pages and thousands of details in this report. Their loved ones deserve better. The law enforcement response at Robb Elementary School on May 24th, 2022, and in the hours and days after, was a failure that should not have happened. We hope to honor the victims and the survivors by working together to try to prevent anything like this from ever happening again, here or anywhere. I'm now going to turn to the key observations and recommendations of the report. On May 24th, 2022 at 11:33 a.m., an active shooter wearing body armor and equipped with a high-power AR-15 rifle entered Robb Elementary School and began shooting into classrooms 111 and 112, which shared a connecting door. Within minutes, 11 law enforcement officers from the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District and the Uvalde Police Department arrived inside the school. Hearing continued gunfire, 5 officers immediately advanced toward classrooms 111 and 112. Within seconds, shots were fired from inside the classroom. Shrapnel hit 2 officers, and all responders retreated to cover. A single officer then made additional attempts to approach the classrooms, but after 11:40 a.m., no more attempts to enter the rooms were made, until 12:48 p.m., more than an hour later. As a consequence of failed leadership, training, and policies, injured and scared students and teachers remain trapped with the subject in the classrooms, waiting to be rescued. Survivors later shared that they heard officers gathered outside the classrooms while they waited. The victims trapped in classroom 111 and 112.
All right, that is Attorney General Merrick Garland.
Tonight, a report from the Department of Justice highlighting what many knew all along. The victims at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde were failed by law enforcement. The report released today uses language like unimaginable horror and cascading failures to describe law enforcement's response to that school massacre. Today, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland was in Uvalde to announce the findings of the Justice Department's year-long review into the massacre. He called the response a failure that should not have happened.
More than 600 days of investigations and interviews, digging into a response that the DOJ says included cascading failures.
Had the law enforcement agencies followed generally accepted practices in an active shooter situation and gone right after the shooter to stop him, lives would have been saved.
The 600-page report outlines some issues we already knew about, that officers treated this as a barricaded suspect rather than an active shooter scenario, that officers were told to stand down instead of going into the classroom immediately, and that police radios didn't work in the school. But it also revealed that even after the 70-plus minutes of waiting in hallways and outside the school, about a minute passed from when officers initially opened the door to the classroom to when the gunman revealed himself from a closet and was shot.
That you have got to eliminate that threat.
The DOJ report includes recommendations for future training, like having police and government agencies conduct preparedness exercises with school districts at least annually, training all school district staff and school police employees on threat assessment processes, and having Uvalde CISD police undergo an accreditation process. And Kennedy says, in contrast to Uvalde, the response in the March 2023 school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee is something others should strive for.
It was textbook. It was unbelievable. We'll never know how many lives they saved.
Yeah, there are. And it's heartbreaking, Lawrence, doing this work with young people across the country. What's really been devastating for me to see is in 2018, when we started in the wake of the Parkland shooting, it's one of the largest youth movements in American history. People told us, that's great that you're marching, but you need to vote. So we did. We went out and voted at the highest rate ever in a non-presidential midterm in American history, and then the highest rate ever in 2020. And still what we're seeing is that the movement isn't broken. It's our government that is deeply, deeply broken right now because we can't even protect our own kids, for God's sake. It's unbelievable. And I think what we need to realize with this is simply being sad about it, as heartbreaking as it is, isn't what's going to change this. Because if that was the case, these things would have ended a long time ago. They would have ended way before Parkland. People need to be, frankly, I think, enraged and have righteous indignation about the fact that these things continue happening, and realize that, the reason why these things don't happen in other countries isn't because there aren't bad guys in other countries. It isn't because there aren't necessarily, people that have bad intentions in other countries. It's because it's a lot harder for people to get weapons like happened recently, or even at my high school in those countries for those individuals. It doesn't prevent everything, but we see these laws do work that are in place. And we need serious action from the Biden administration. We need serious action from Republican senators to break through the filibuster that is actively killing our children, that is killing our parents, that is killing our friends and family every day across this country.
He said righteous indignation. I think about, and when it happened last year, everybody was appalled that those police just loitered around in the hall while that madman was killing children. One little child was on the phone with 911 saying, please come and save us, please come and save us. And those cops were just sitting around, which, it's a long report. I didn't read the whole report. I did see the whole press conference, and the Attorney General went into a lot of detail as to all the things that went wrong, even to the extent of after they had killed the gunman and they were taking the children that were injured and the children that were dead, they put the children that were dead in ambulances and put the children that were injured in a school bus. Who does that? So, what do you think, honey?
Well, a couple things. One is that you know, when you take an oath to be a police officer, you also understand or should understand that there be times when your life is in danger, and that you will do whatever you do to protect and serve, even though there's a risk that that could happen. And now, I'm not saying that, you know, it's difficult. I mean, not difficult. I'm saying that that's your oath, and the people rely on you for that. So when you get to that point, you say, well, no, I'm not going to do that. That places a lot of people in jeopardy and all that. And so most likely you should not have become a police officer at all. But the glaring problem is guns and access to guns and military type guns that are being used upon the public. And the biggest problem of all is that our politicians that we rely on to serve us also are failing, in that they're still allowing those type weapons to be among us. And so it's not whether it's going to happen again, it's when. It's going to happen. It's going to keep on happening until we do some strong medicine here and at least take those guns out of the way. Because, you know, with those guns, you don't have a chance. I mean, you and I don't have a chance, much less little children who, I mean, I don't even want to get into how horrible it is because it bothers me as to what happened to them.
You know, somebody said maybe they should show the pictures of how those guns ripped those children apart. They mentioned one, well, not one, several of the families. They were asking, please bring some of their things, their clothes or anything, because their faces are gone. We have nothing with which we can identify them. Bring your DNA, because we cannot identify these children. And you know, I know that the police were afraid. I mean, that's why they didn't save the kids. But you're right. If he had a 9mm gun, they would have ran right in there and taken care of that. And we have to me, as Christians, we have a duty, like he said, righteous indignation. We have a duty to become activists against military style weapons in our communities, because it is going to keep on happening until we get those guns off the street.
It's amazing. It's amazing that it you know, when people have power, sit back and allow things to happen that they could have done something to stop it. That's evil. That is actually evil.
It really is.
And we'll get into more of that as we look at these evangelicals.
One more thing about that. Why do they do that? Why do the politicians just let it keep happening? It's because of the NRA and the money that they get from the NRA. And just want to mention, Tish James is going after the NRA too. So we'll see what happens with that when it comes out. Okay, honey, that's all.
As you can tell, Marvel's very passionate about that. And we want to thank her for bringing that. I mean, we need to understand and we need to know what's going on around us. And this is something that just keeps coming up over and over and over again. And it does have some relationship to these evangelicals also. So it's right on time for our study. Now, we started this